I am the Alpha and the Omega, the first and the last." Those words opened the door to one of the strangest and most powerful visions ever recorded. John asked, "Was I dead? Or was I seeing the living God?" Then came the command, "Write down what you see, because I will show you what must soon take place." John saw things no ordinary person could have imagined. Beasts rising from the sea, stars falling from the heavens, a dragon with 7 heads, a magnificent city made of gold, 4 mysterious riders charging across the earth, bringing war, famine, death, and destruction. This was not a nightmare. It was the final book of the Bible, and every terrifying image was recorded by one man who believed he had been shown the end of the world itself. His name was John. He was old. He was alone. And he had been sent away to a tiny island in the middle of the sea because powerful people wanted his voice silenced. The island was called Patmos. But what his enemies thought would become his place of silence became the place where heaven opened before him. On that lonely island, John saw the throne of God surrounded by lightning. He saw a lamb take a sealed scroll containing the destiny of humanity. One by one, the seals were broken, and as each seal opened, the world seemed to move closer and closer to its final hour. Trumpets sounded. Bowls of judgment were poured out. A great evil rose to power and demanded its mark upon the hands and foreheads of humanity. A proud and corrupt city grew wealthy from the suffering of others. Then the heavens opened. A rider appeared on a white horse, and the final battle began. But beneath all the terrifying visions was a message of hope. Asterisk, Evil would not have the final word. John on Patmos. John had once been one of the 12 men who walked beside Jesus. He had eaten with him. He had listened to him teach. He had watched him heal the sick and speak to crowds. And on the darkest day of his life, John stood near the cross and watched Jesus die. 3 days later, John became one of the witnesses to the empty tomb. Years passed. Decades passed. Most of the other disciples were gone. Some had died because they refused to stop speaking about Jesus. John was now an old man, carrying a lifetime of memories, but age had not silenced him. He continued telling people about Jesus, and that was exactly what brought trouble upon him. The rulers wanted this new faith stopped. So John was arrested and sent away to Patmos, a rocky island used as a place of punishment. They believed they had removed him from the world. They believed his voice would disappear among the rocks and waves. They were wrong. One day, while John was praying, something happened that would change everything. A voice came from behind him. It was powerful, clear, and commanding. Like the sound of a trumpet, write down what you are about to see. John turned, and what he saw was so overwhelming that he fell to the ground. 7 golden lampstands stood before him, and walking among them was a figure unlike anything John had ever seen. He looked like a man, but he was far more than a man. He wore a long robe with a golden band across his chest. His hair was white. His eyes burned like flames. His feet shone like metal heated inside a furnace. His voice sounded like rushing waters. 7 stars rested in his right hand, and from his mouth came a sharp sword. His face shone like the sun. John could not remain standing. He fell to the ground in fear. Then something unexpected happened. The figure reached down and placed his hand upon John. The voice that had sounded like thunder became gentle. "Do not be afraid. I am the first and the last. I was dead, but now I am alive forever and ever. I hold the keys of death and the grave." John understood. This was Jesus, the same Jesus he had followed years before, the same Jesus he had watched die on the cross. But now he stood before John in glory. The friend John had once eaten meals with was now revealed as the King of creation. And this was only the beginning. The seven churches. Before showing John the great events that would come, Jesus gave him messages for seven churches. Seven communities of believers living in difficult and dangerous times. Each church received a different message. Some were praised. Some were warned. Some were comforted, and some were called to wake up before it was too late. One church had worked hard and refused to give up. But they had lost something important. They had lost their first love. Jesus told them to remember where they had fallen and return to the love they once had. Another church was suffering terribly. They were poor. They were being persecuted. Yet Jesus told them that, although they were poor in the eyes of the world, they were rich in heaven. He told them to remain faithful, even if faithfulness cost them their lives. Another church appeared alive from the outside. It was busy. It was respected. It seemed successful. But inside, its faith was dying. Jesus warned them, "Wake up." Another church was neither hot nor cold. They were comfortable. They believed they had everything they needed. But Jesus told them they were spiritually poor, blind, and empty. Yet even there, the invitation remained. "I am standing at the door and knocking. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come in." That was the message behind all seven letters. Return. Wake up. Open the door. Come home. The throne of God. After the letters were completed, John looked upward, and he saw an open door in heaven. The same trumpet-like voice called to him, "Come up here. I will show you what must happen after this." Suddenly, John found himself standing before the throne of God. The throne was surrounded by glory. Lightning flashed, thunder rolled, a brilliant rainbow surrounded the throne. 7 lamps burned before it. And before the throne stretched something like a sea of glass, clear as crystal. Around the throne were 24 smaller thrones. 24 elders sat upon them, dressed in white and wearing golden crowns. 4 mysterious living creatures surrounded the throne. They were covered with eyes. Day and night they declared, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty." Whenever they worshipped, the 24 elders fell down before God. They removed their crowns and placed them before the throne. Everything they possessed belonged to him. Everything they were came from him. Then John noticed something in the right hand of the one seated on the throne. A scroll. It was sealed with 7 seals. A mighty angel called out, "Who is worthy to open the scroll?" Silence filled heaven. No one stepped forward, no angel, no elder, no one on earth, no one under the earth. John began to weep. If no one could open the scroll, then the future remained sealed. But one of the elders told him, "Do not cry. The Lion of Judah has conquered." John looked. He expected to see a powerful lion. Instead, he saw a lamb. A lamb that looked as though it had been sacrificed. Its wounds were visible. Yet it was standing, alive. This was Jesus. The Lamb who had given his life had conquered death. He alone was worthy. He stepped forward and took the scroll, and the moment he did, heaven erupted in worship. Thousands upon thousands of angels lifted their voices. Every creature in heaven, on earth, and in the sea praised the Lamb. The future was now in his hands, and the seals began to break. The Four Horsemen. The first seal opened. A white horse appeared. Its rider carried a bow and wore a crown. He rode out conquering. The second seal opened. A red horse appeared. Its rider carried a great sword. Peace was taken from the earth. People turned against one another. War spread. The third seal opened. A black horse appeared. Its rider carried scales. Food became painfully expensive. A day's labor could barely provide enough bread to survive. Famine had arrived. Then the fourth seal opened. A pale horse appeared. Its rider was named Death, and behind him came the grave. They were given power to destroy through war, famine, disease, and death. 4 riders, 4 terrifying forces moving across the earth. Then the fifth seal opened. John saw the souls of people who had died because they remained faithful to God. They cried, "How long, Lord? How long until justice comes?" They were given white robes and told to wait. Then the sixth seal opened. The earth shook. The sun became dark. The moon turned red. Stars fell from the sky. Kings, generals, rich and poor, powerful and weak, all hid themselves. Everyone realized that the great day of judgment had arrived. But before the seventh seal was opened, everything became still. God remembers his people. John saw 4 angels holding back the winds. Another angel appeared carrying the seal of the living God. He commanded the angels not to harm the earth until God's servants had been marked and protected. God had not forgotten his people. Even in the middle of judgment, he knew exactly who belonged to him. Then John saw an enormous crowd. No one could count them. They came from every nation, tribe, people, and language. They stood before the throne and before the Lamb. They wore white robes. They held palm branches, and they cried, "Salvation belongs to our God and to the Lamb." John asked who these people were. The answer was simple. They were the ones who had come through great suffering. They had remained faithful. And now they stood before God. They would never hunger again. They would never thirst again. The Lamb would shepherd them, and God would wipe every tear from their eyes. Then the seventh seal was opened, and heaven became completely silent. For about half an hour, there was no sound. Then 7 angels appeared. Each one received a trumpet, and the final warnings began.
The 7 Trumpets.
The first trumpet sounded. Hail and fire fell upon the earth. Trees burned. The green grass was destroyed. The second trumpet sounded. Something like a burning mountain crashed into the sea. A third of the sea became affected. Creatures died, ships were destroyed. The third trumpet sounded. A blazing star fell from heaven. It struck rivers and springs. The waters became bitter. The fourth trumpet sounded. A third of the sun, moon, and stars became dark. The world itself seemed to lose its light. Then John saw an eagle flying through the sky. A warning was given. 3 more trumpets were coming, and they would be worse. The fifth trumpet sounded. A star fell from heaven. A key was given to it. The key opened the bottomless pit. Smoke poured upward, and from the smoke came terrifying creatures resembling locusts. They had human-like faces, teeth like lions, and tails like scorpions. Their king was called the Destroyer. They were given permission to torment those who did not belong to God, but they were not allowed to kill them. Then the sixth trumpet sounded. 4 angels were released. An enormous army appeared. John was told the army numbered 200 million horsemen. Fire and smoke came from the mouths of their horses. A huge part of humanity was destroyed. Yet, even after everything that had happened, many people refused to repent. They continued worshiping false gods. They continued stealing, lying, killing, and harming one another. The warnings had grown louder, but their hearts remained hard. The little scroll. Then a mighty angel appeared. He stood with 1 foot on the sea and 1 foot on the land. He held a little scroll. The angel shouted. 7 thunders answered. John prepared to write down what they said, but heaven commanded him not to record it. Then John was told to take the little scroll and eat it. It tasted sweet like honey, but after he swallowed it, it became bitter inside him. God's message could be both sweet and painful. Sweet because it carried truth and hope. Bitter because it also contained warnings and judgment. John had to accept both. The 2 witnesses. John was then shown 2 witnesses. God gave them great power. They spoke his truth boldly. No one could stop them while their mission remained unfinished. But eventually, the beast attacked them. They were killed. Their bodies were left in the street. People celebrated their deaths. They exchanged gifts, because the 2 witnesses who had troubled the world were finally gone. For 3.5 days, their bodies remained there. Then the breath of God entered them. They stood again. Fear spread through everyone watching. A voice from heaven called, "Come up here." The 2 witnesses rose into heaven. The world could silence God's messengers temporarily, but it could never silence God's truth forever. The dragon. Then John saw another great sign in heaven. A woman appeared, surrounded by light. She was about to give birth. Then another sign appeared. A huge red dragon. 7 heads. 10 horns. Crowns upon its heads. Its tail swept 1/3 of the stars from heaven. The dragon waited for the woman's child. When the child was born, the dragon tried to destroy him, but the child was taken safely to God. The woman fled into the wilderness, where God had prepared a place for her. Then war broke out in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon. The dragon was defeated, and John was told exactly who the dragon was. The ancient serpent, the devil Satan, the deceiver of the whole world. He was thrown down to earth. A voice in heaven announced that the accuser had been defeated. But a warning followed. The devil knew his time was short, and because he knew his time was running out, his anger became greater. The beasts. The dragon turned his attention toward God's people. Then John saw a beast rising from the sea. It had 7 heads and 10 horns. It was terrifying. The dragon gave it power and authority. People across the world were amazed by it. They followed it. They worshipped it. The beast spoke against God and was allowed to make war against God's people. Then another beast appeared. This one came from the earth. It looked harmless at first, but its voice was like the dragon. It deceived people. It performed signs. It even called fire down from heaven. Then it forced people to receive a mark on their right hands or foreheads. Without the mark, people could not buy or sell. The mark was connected with the number of the beast. That number was asterisk, asterisk, 666, asterisk, asterisk. The choice became painfully clear. Follow the beast and receive the mark, or remain faithful to God and risk losing everything. Money, food, security, even life itself. The pressure would be enormous. But God would know who remained faithful. The Lamb and his people. After the darkness of the beasts, John saw something beautiful. The Lamb stood on Mount Zion. Around him were his faithful people. They had refused to worship the beast. They had refused to accept its mark. They sang a new song. Then angels appeared in the sky. The first announced, "Fear God and give him glory. The hour of judgment has come." The second announced, "Babylon has fallen." The third warned that those who worshiped the beast and accepted its mark would face God's judgment. Then came a blessing for those who died faithful to God. Their work would not be forgotten. Their burdens would end. Their faithfulness would follow them. Then John saw another image, a harvest. The earth had become like a field ready to be gathered. The time had come. The 7 bowls. 7 angels appeared. Each carried a bowl filled with God's judgment. The first bowl was poured upon the earth. A terrible plague struck those who carried the beast's mark. The second bowl was poured into the sea. The sea became like blood. The third bowl was poured into rivers and springs. The waters became polluted. The fourth bowl was poured toward the sun. The heat became unbearable. Yet people still refused to repent. The fifth bowl was poured over the throne of the beast. Darkness covered its kingdom. Still, people would not change. The sixth bowl was poured over the great river. Its waters dried up. The kings of the earth gathered their armies. They came toward a place called Armageddon. Then the seventh bowl was poured into the air. A voice came from the throne. "It is done." Lightning flashed. Thunder crashed. The earth shook with an earthquake, unlike anything before it. The great city was shattered. Mountains disappeared. Islands vanished. Huge hailstones fell from the sky. The bowls were empty. The final judgment had come. Babylon falls. Then John was shown Babylon, a powerful and wicked city. A woman sat upon the scarlet beast. She wore purple and scarlet. She was covered with gold, jewels, and pearls. In her hand was a golden cup filled with corruption. Across her forehead was written, "Babylon the Great." She represented a world obsessed with wealth, luxury, power, pleasure, and corruption. A world that became rich by crushing the weak. But her time was almost finished. An angel announced, "Fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great." Her wealth disappeared. The kings who had benefited from her mourned. The merchants cried because their riches had vanished. Sailors watched from far away as the city burned. But heaven celebrated. A great cry rose, "Hallelujah!" The system that had seemed unstoppable had finally collapsed. Babylon had fallen. The return of the king. Then heaven opened. A rider appeared on a white horse. His name was Faithful and True. His eyes burned like fire. Many crowns rested upon his head. His robe carried a name, King of Kings and Lord of Lords. Behind him came the armies of heaven. They rode white horses. They were dressed in pure, shining garments. The beast gathered the kings of the earth. They prepared to fight against the rider, but there was barely a battle. The beast was captured. The false prophet was captured. Both were thrown into the lake of fire. The deception ended. The lies ended. The forced worship ended. The true king had arrived. The fall of Satan. One enemy remained, the dragon. An angel came from heaven carrying a great chain. He seized the dragon, the ancient serpent, the devil, Satan. He bound him and threw him into the bottomless pit. For 1,000 years, the deceiver was restrained. The faithful people of God reigned with Christ. But after the 1,000 years, Satan was released one final time. Immediately, he returned to his old purpose. He deceived the nations. He gathered an enormous army. They surrounded the city of God's people. But the battle never began. Fire came down from heaven. The army was destroyed. And Satan was thrown into the lake of fire. The ancient enemy was finished. Evil had run out of moves. The great white throne. Then John saw a great white throne. The one seated upon it was so glorious that earth and heaven fled from his presence. Every person who had ever lived stood before the throne. Kings, beggars, famous people, forgotten people, rich and poor, powerful and weak. Everyone was there. The sea gave up the dead. The grave gave up those it had held. No one was missing. Then books were opened. The deeds of every person were revealed. Nothing remained hidden. Every action, every word, every secret. Then another book was opened, the book of life. The question was no longer about wealth, not fame, not power, not success. There was only one question. Asterisk, was your name written in the book of life? Those whose names were not found there were thrown into the lake of fire. John called this the second death. The final end of evil. The final end of rebellion. The final end of darkness. But for those whose names were written in the book of life, this was not the end. It was the beginning. The New Jerusalem. John saw a new heaven and a new earth. The old world had passed away. The sea was gone. And coming down from heaven was the holy city, the New Jerusalem. It was beautiful beyond anything words could describe. It shone with the glory of God. A great wall surrounded it. 12 gates stood around the city. Each gate was like a giant pearl. The streets were pure gold. The city was filled with precious stones. But John noticed something missing. There was no temple. Why? Because God himself was there. His presence filled everything. There was no need for the sun or moon. God's glory gave the city its light. There was no darkness, no fear, no danger, no reason for the gates to close. And through the center of the city flowed the river of the water of life, clear as crystal. It flowed from the throne of God and the Lamb. Beside it grew the tree of life, the same tree that had stood in the garden at the beginning of humanity's story. What had been lost was restored. What had been broken was healed, and God's people would finally see his face. They would live with him forever. No more death, no more war, no more suffering, no more crying, no more pain. Every tear would be gone. The final message. And that is how the strangest book in the Bible ends. Not with darkness, not with the beast, not with the dragon, not with destruction. It ends with light, a city of gold, a river of life, the presence of God, and every tear wiped away. We began with one lonely man on a rocky island. John was abandoned by the world, but heaven had not abandoned him. He saw the seals break. He saw the Four Horsemen ride. He heard the trumpets sound. He witnessed the rise of the dragon and the beasts. He saw the mark of the beast. He watched Babylon fall. He saw the return of the king. He witnessed the final judgment. And finally, he saw the new creation, a world where evil no longer exists. And that brings us to the message at the heart of Revelation. This book is not ultimately about fear. It is not simply about monsters, disasters, or judgment. It is about the victory of God. It is about faithfulness when the world tells you to give up. It is about hope when everything around you appears to be falling apart. And above all, it is about this one truth: evil does not win. The darkness may seem powerful. The enemy may appear unstoppable. The world may look broken beyond repair, but the story does not end there. The Lamb wins, the King returns, the dragon falls, Babylon falls. Death itself is defeated, and God makes everything new. So if you ever find yourself living through a season of darkness, remember the final picture John was given. Not the dragon, not the beast, not the fire. Look beyond all of it. Look toward the city. Look toward the river of life. Look toward the throne. Because the final word belongs not to darkness, but to God. And the final promise is simple: God will make all things new.